Greetings and welcome to Almond Acres Charter Academy. Those of you watching this video are mostly volunteers who are signing up to come into the classroom or somewhere on campus and support our teachers and our kids. And we are truly grateful. When I look back at the history of our school, it was started by volunteers. There were about 10 individuals, mostly parents, but also some educators who decided, hey, we want to have another option for our families in the Paso Robles area. And they truly volunteered their time. For 2 years, they worked together on a weekly basis to write a charter, to go through all of the political process of chartering a new school. So it was truly in the heart of volunteerism that our school was started. When we actually got chartered and were able to open the school, it was myself and about 10 other dads and moms who came out to the campus and actually built the campus. We added 2 buildings, we added a fire line, we added all kinds of things, and it was all done by volunteers. And our school thrives because people come in as parents and community members and volunteer their time. Our board is mostly volunteers without children at the school, but some do have children at our school. So really just grateful, really thankful that that spirit of volunteerism is alive and well and that you're choosing to come help on campus. So my goal today is to orient you a bit to the parameters of a volunteer as well as the philosophy of the school. So it's a 2-part video. The first part will be those parameters, those logistical things that volunteers need to do in order to volunteer on campus. So let me jump into that, switch my screen here, and run through some questions that you probably would like answered. So these are the key questions, and you probably have, I hope, with you, maybe even in your hands, the volunteer packet that we can use as our guide. At the end of this packet, you're signing to an agreement with the school that you will follow these guidelines. So let's jump into the first question. What is that first question? It is, oops, I gotta switch to the right place. Here we go. Who can volunteer? Anyone, essentially. Anyone can volunteer as long as they comply with some of the guidelines and the laws related to being on campus with students. So the number one requirement for all volunteers is they be fully fingerprinted. So they go through a live scan process with the Department of Justice. It's not complicated. It's relatively simple to do, but that means that person is safe to be with our kids, safe to be on campus. So that's critical. That's number one. Additionally, in terms of safety, a TB test is necessary. So the tuberculosis test is required of anybody working on a public school campus, and that will, again, protect everybody involved, kids and adults alike. Third is that a volunteer has to complete the paperwork. This paperwork that you have in front of you must be completed, signed, and approved by the school. So who can volunteer outside of that? It can be a parent, it can be a grandparent, it can be a community member. So we have community members that are on our board. We have community members that just love our school and want to give their time and their talent to the school. So again, we thank you for those people who are choosing to do that. So what can volunteers do to help? There's so many different things that somebody can do to help. Obviously, there's the traditional, working in the classroom with the teacher and supporting students one-on-one or in small groups. Anybody that's on campus as a volunteer would always be accompanied by a staff member. So you would never be alone. You wouldn't have to worry about, you're not going to teach a class. You're not going to take a group of kids and be responsible for their safety and their learning completely. So you'll always be in the company of another staff member. You can support our school in the cafeteria. You can support the school out on the field during recess time. You can support our school with our parking and our transportation system and getting cars in and out of our school quickly and safely. So there are all different ways. Field trips is another opportunity for parents to go on a field trip. I know from my experience, I was blessed to have my daughter at our school for 9 years, from kindergarten through 8th grade. And it was the most wonderful thing to be on campus with my child. There's something very powerful about that, a statement that we say to our kids that we really care about what's going on with them in their day-to-day life, especially when they're at school. So, all right, next question. What is required of a volunteer? I kind of went over that a little bit already, but just reiterate that again, that background, fingerprinting, the TB test, that you fill out this form, that you go through this orientation process with me, that you come to school prepared. You are coming to school dressed appropriately. You're coming with an attitude or a disposition about teaching and learning that we hold near and dear to our hearts at Alma Dakers, that you're there to affirm kids for their strengths and their struggles. You're there to stretch them to be and become great citizens, and that you're there to celebrate their success. That's our mission statement, growing great kids by affirming, stretching, and celebrating. So it's a cooperative effort, a cooperative attitude, that we're all there for the same goal, the same results, and that is to grow great kids. Next question, when can volunteers help? Well, that's pretty wide open, isn't it? That whole day that doesn't, the primary thing is that you coordinate. You coordinate with whomever you're going to help. If it's a teacher that you've discussed with the teacher, what day or what time that teacher needs you in the classroom. We don't want people to come in haphazardly. We want to know when they're coming and for what purpose they're coming, so that we have, we're monitoring all adults that are on campus. So make sure that you coordinate something with the teacher that your student is in class with, or with our office staff. You've coordinated with Edith, so she knows when you're coming. She's our volunteer coordinator. And we know what day, what time, not something haphazard. And we're flexible for sure, but we need to know the day and the time and to whom you're going to be volunteering with. Next question, how shall volunteers associate with students and staff while on campus? The same way we all should, with a firm, fair, and friendly smile, with just a due regard for the dignity of every person on campus. We regard everyone as valuable, as intelligent, as capable people, and that we are going to treat them with great respect. We are going to treat people with kindness. We're going to treat them as terrific citizens. So I'll go over that in a little bit, but our philosophy is critical that we exemplify that as adults, that we aren't grouches, that we are very just positive people who want to care for kids, keep them safe, and help them to be smart. And let's see, a couple more questions here. Why should you volunteer? Well, I know for many of us, we volunteer because we want to be closer to our children. It's just such a pleasure, a privilege to get to be with our kids in their school day. So that's a great reason to come and volunteer. But it's also the same regard for the other kids, that it's not just my child that I'm helping. I'm there to help all kids that I'm, assigned to work with, not just my own child. So it might mean that you are, working with a different grade level. You're working, outside, let's say for recess or lunchtime, that you're working with a group of kids, maybe a certain grade span, but we're not just working with our own child. We're working for all the children at Alma Dakers. And by the way, I'm skipping through a lot of the notes in here, so I expect that everybody gets to read through all of this. I'm kind of highlighting the things that are key. All right, where is everything? I want to give you a quick overview on the campus. But when you do come to volunteer, you need to know the campus. Number one reason is for safety. If we have any type of a drill, if we have a fire drill, an earthquake drill, or actually an actual fire or earthquake, or we need to shelter in place or go into a lockdown mode, then you need to know where to go. So I'm going to orient you to the campus, but again, you won't ever be alone. You'll always be with another staff member who's been trained in our emergency procedures. So you'll look to them for direction as to where you would go in the case of any emergency. So this isn't an emergency preparedness training. This is just to alert you to the fact that the shape of our campus and the exits and such and where the kids are. So let me show you an image. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got one more. Yeah, here, that's right. What should we do in the case of emergency? So here's an image of the school, and that front entrance is here. You can see my cursor. This is one of the original architectural images, so it's pretty close. It doesn't have the colored roll-up doors, but most everything is pretty laid out the way it is today. So front entrance, administration offices are all in the front. And then let me jump to kindergarten in the back. So the kindergarten and first grade are in the very back of the campus behind the gym / multi-purpose room. And then we go around the corner, we have second grade and third grade. And each of these grade levels has 2 classrooms. So second and third grade. Then we jump back over to the west side of the school, and the fourth and the fifth grade are on that side. Middle schools, grades 6, 7, and 8, are in the front corners of the school. There are 3 classrooms on each side, and that's where our middle school is. There are exits in every classroom. Exits to the exterior of the school and exits to the interior of the school. So our school was designed with safety in mind so that we had ways to get kids out of the building or ways to keep kids in the building in the case of any emergency. So there, you'll notice as you take a tour of the campus that there are exits both from the classroom to the outside as well as to the inside. When we do gather for any kind of a drill or in the case of emergency, we would gather, not likely, depending on the emergency, on the back lawn or the parking lot area in the north side of the campus where my cursor is pointing there. So that's generally the layout of the school. If you ever want to know what grade level, well, we work our way around the building, we jump back over to the 4th and 5th, and then the middle school are in the front and administration offices. Hope that's helpful. So that's kind of the who, what, where, how, and why of volunteering at our campus. Again, I ask you to read thoroughly the document that Edith has provided us. The dress code for adults is there. All of that information is printed out in that document, which you'll sign if you'd like to be a volunteer. Let me jump now to part 2 of the video. So if you want to pause here, there is a little questionnaire to check for understanding on all these things that I just went over. So I'd invite you to go look at that questionnaire and answer the questions that go along with part 1. Part 2 is the mission and vision of the school. And this is so much to do with our attitude toward one another, both as adults and toward our kids, and why we're here, why we choose to be educators and parents. So I'm going to run through these different elements and share with you what these mean at Almond Acres, because they are mostly unique to Almond Acres Charter Academy. But what's interesting is, though they might be unique, a unique language that we use, they're not unique to our heart and our mind. I have never heard anybody hear these things and say, well, that's not true. I don't think that's right. These are just innate ways that we think as educators and parents. We just oftentimes need to be reminded of them. So the first one is educate. The word educate and the word parent are actually synonyms. When you look back at the Greek and Latin roots of these words, the words almost are identical, or the definitions are identical. And in its briefest form, I like to say that educate and parent means to educe or to draw out who a child is. Our role isn't to fill our kids in with 3,500 educational standards or with things that we want them to be. Our role as educators and parents is to educe the natural, innate intelligence, personality, temperament of our kids. Every one of our kids are unique for some reason. And our role is to help them figure out what that role is in life. and it's likely going to lead them to their career, to their vocation in life. So to educate and to parent is to help that child find out, who am I? How am I smart? What are the things that really make me happy? Those are oftentimes their smartest intelligences. So number one, let's define what educate and parent means. We're going to draw out who that child is. Help them to fly their own kite is one way we like to say it. All right, next topic or next slide is our mission statement. So it's real simple to say we grow great kids. And that is a beautiful mission statement. It goes back to that growing idea. We're nurturing, we're drawing out, and we're drawing out kids who are great. What does it mean to be great? Well, they're great because they're being the best version of themselves. They're being how they're smart, and they're being a great citizen. And we do that in 3 steps or 3 ways. And they do kind of go in order: affirm, stretch, and celebrate. We're going to affirm them for their strength and their struggle. Don't ever forget to affirm a child's struggle. And when I say affirm, that doesn't mean accept it and say it's okay. It means to acknowledge it, that this is hard. This isn't an easy thing for me. It's not my natural intelligence. I listened to an adult recently who said, I'm terrible at math, even 3rd grade math. Well, that may not be that person's innate intelligence, is not be mathematics. But that person is an incredible individual who can be a leader in their own right, be an artist. So we need to affirm how we're strong and also how we struggle. And then we can stretch people. If you try to stretch me before you've affirmed me, I don't trust you. I don't believe that you're willing to help me because you're not really affirming who I am. You don't know me. So stretching comes secondary to affirmation. And that's when we have trust, kids will listen to us and be willing to open up their mind, to think about things in a different way, to be challenged by doing what is true and good and beautiful. They will stretch. So we want to stretch productive and positive habits of mind. Finally, we've got to say, well done, good job. I always like to say, let's have cake. We celebrate that awakening of creativity, the awakening of new understanding and new ability. So if, this was asked of me many, many, many years ago, how would I define parenting or educating in terms of a process that we can use? If we think about these 3 things, affirm, stretch, and celebrate, we're going to do a good job. So because we're going to do it with due regard for that person as a unique person, and we're trying to stretch them into being and becoming the person that they really are. So that's the mission statement of our school, and I hope all of us will have that in their mind. At minimum, I'm growing great kids. Secondly, that I can affirm, stretch, and celebrate. All right, next one. So what's this heart, mind, body, and soul business? We've got these 4 colors. They're in our uniforms. They're painted on our walls. They're everywhere. Well, this is an interesting, beautiful way of describing the whole human person. And we can even describe our school completely with this heart, mind, body, and soul concept. Our logo symbolizes this idea that we're spinning, we're stretching, we're spiraling around these 4 areas of life so that we don't neglect something. Because when we neglect something, the other 3 areas are going to fall apart or fall down a bit. The same is true when we focus on one area that needs help. It actually helps to stretch the other areas too. That's for another video. But real quickly, to look at our school, heart, mind, body, and soul, we see the heart part of our school as the families in the community of our school. So it is our board members, it is our parents, it is all of the people, the community of the school, and clearly and obviously each of you as families to our school. You are who we serve. The mind of our school is administration and finance. It's the laws we have to abide by. It's the guidelines that the state and the county put out. It's our authorizer, who is the County Office of Education, and the requirements that they have for us to be a school, and clearly the budgeting and financing of the school. The body of the school is safety, facilities, and equipment. So how do we keep things physically safe? How do we provide physical the physical needs of our kids and our staff. And then finally, the soul of our school is teaching and learning. So if we were to only focus on one of these as a leadership team, as a parent, we would be neglecting some very critical elements of the human person. So we like to look at the whole school in this way, just like we look at a person: heart, mind, body, and soul, how they're smart in those 4 areas. So let me illustrate that a little further. You may be familiar now with the kite, and whether if you have a child at the school, then they've actually come home with their kite already. They develop this diagram that kind of looks like a kite usually. Sometimes it's a box kite, sometimes it's a very pointed kite, but each kite is a description of how that child thinks, how they're smart. We should, let me say it this way. When we consider the intelligence of any person, consider how they are smart as opposed to how smart they are. All too often, people say, oh, they're so smart. Well, they're usually talking about mind smarts. They're good readers. They're good mathematicians. They're good speakers. But what about the great dancer? What about the great artist? What about the great musician? What about the great people person? All of those are intelligences that deserve dignity and respect and will likely be that person's vocation in life, their career. They're likely to move toward the direction of their kite points. So let me go through those quickly. In the heart area, the key intelligences are interpersonal, meaning people smart, and naturalist, plant and animal smart. Their favorite question is who. So if it's a person with a very blue kite, those tend to be their intelligences and the key questions. In the mind, it's linguistic and logical mathematical, word smart and number smart, and their favorite questions are what and when. In the body area is kinesthetic, meaning movement, meaning using hands-on ways of learning and thinking and doing, and visual spatial, understanding space and even time and how something fits or doesn't fit visually, physically. Those key questions are where and how. And finally, in the soul area, it's an intrapersonal intelligence. People who like to think about their own thinking. They're very, sometimes they're introverted, but not necessarily. But they like to do a lot of processing in their mind, in their own mind, as opposed with somebody else's mind, which is the interpersonal intelligence. And musical. They tend to be more musically inclined. Their favorite question is why. So when we look at someone's kite, I can look at this one and say, okay, the first thing that I should focus on if I'm trying to affirm this child is the body, is how might they do a task physically or visually, spatially. So I would use their strength in order to stretch where maybe they struggle. Then I might go to their soulfulness and ask a why question. Now, if somebody's struggling with something in mathematics, that's the yellow area, then I'm going to use the red to help the yellow. I'm going to try to show them math tips and tricks using their body, using their kinesthetic intelligence, doing it visually and spatially, as opposed to just teaching it verbally. So that's how this kind of works with the kite, is you can look at any person's kite and realize where should I start when they're struggling or I need to affirm them. And then how might I use how they're smart to help where they struggle. I always say use their strength to stretch their struggle. So that's the personal kite. It's a cool image that describes both our personality and our intelligences and how we think. All right, moving on to the terrific traits. These are foundational citizenship character traits that are necessary to be smart, to do anything in life. If I am trustworthy, respectful, responsible, fair, and caring, I am very likely to be successful in whatever venture I go into. So they are foundational. They are core principles, or not principles, they're behaviors. To be trustworthy, to be respectful, responsible, fair, and caring are behaviors that I want to promote. I would just about guarantee, because I've been doing it many years, that if a student makes any kind of mistake, they venture in the wrong direction, they have neglected one of these. So if you were to ask them, tell me what you did, but now tell me what character trait that you didn't practice, they're going to tell you one of these 5. Oftentimes they'll tell you 3 to 5 of them. But what I usually do is focus on one, the one that they think is the most important to their behavior. And that's the behavior we want to fix. It's not the actual action, it's the character trait that needs to be fixed. So when kids make mistakes, focus on the character trait. Don't focus as much on the behavior. That we can work with, but that's just the context of a character trait gone awry. So focus on, all right, we need to practice being respectful. So if you do one thing wrong, let's do 3 to 5 things right by practicing respect 3 to 5 different ways, by practicing caring 3 to 5 different ways, because we want to rebuild that thinking with the positive character development. Hope that makes some sense. That deserves its own video also. All right, this is the pledge that every morning at the end of Shared Start, our students will recite together. It turns into a cheer, and it goes like this. We are the leaders of AACA. We are trustworthy, respectful, responsible, fair, and caring. We are terrific. Go Kites. So that cheer is something they hear every day. They know these 5 words. They know if you were to say, what are the 5 character traits, they can tell you. They're trustworthy, respectful, responsible, fair, and caring. They're terrific. And we can use that language to help them focus on their character as opposed to just focusing on a behavior. Hope that makes sense. All right. Now, like I said, these things are building blocks. So if we go through and every week the kids are learning about and learning how to practice these character traits, these character behaviors, that's where everything starts. We then layer on the 7 habits of highly effective people. If you're familiar with that content or that text, that book by Stephen Covey, those things are essential and are very practical ways for us to practice good citizenship and good thinking behavior. Beyond that, there's another whole host of habits of mind. So when we talk about stretching productive habits of mind, these are the productive habits of mind that make us smart. These are the things we want to stretch. Even that goofy one right in the middle there, it says finding humor. We want kids to find humor, especially in times of stress, because it can de-escalate a situation. We want them to think flexibly. We want them to question. We want them to persist. We want them to manage their impulsivity. So all of these terms or these character habits of mind this is the language that we want to feed to our children, because this is what makes them smart. What makes us intelligent is we have these neural pathways working in our brain to resolve challenges and make good decisions in life. So those are the building blocks of smart people. It's not so much English and math, is it? It's using any one of these in any context of life. That's what will make them smart. So that's what makes them leaders and builds leadership skill. All right, going back to the mission statement as a simple guide, a simple way to help somebody that's dealing with a challenge. I've found that this is the simplest approach and the most effective approach. And it has a lot to do with neurology. It has a lot to do with how our brain functions, the different parts of our brain. Because our brain starts with a survival mode, and then it goes to a feeling mode, and then it goes to a thinking mode. So usually kids are stuck when they're struggling in the feeling mode of the brain. So we ask them, how are you feeling? And we have a simple tool called the Kimochi page. And you ask the question, how do you feel? Find 1 or 2 or 3 of these little characters. And by the way, this works for every grade level. It even works with us as adults. Help me find how I'm feeling. Because when I name the feeling, I start to tame the feeling. So if I say, I'm feeling cranky, and I say, I'm feeling cranky because I didn't sleep well last night. Great, I've just named it. And all of a sudden I'm starting to tame it because I'm sharing it with you and you're going to help me work through this. So then I'm going to stretch. What do you think is the next right thing to do? That automatically challenges a child's conscience, their conscience about what's the right thing to do. Because there's plenty of wrong things to do that I might feel like doing, but if I ask what the next right thing to do is, they're very likely to identify what is true and good, not just what they feel like doing. So the Kimochi page gets us to consider, what's the terrific way to handle this situation. And then finally, when they've kind of worked through this thinking, congratulate them. That's so smart of you. That was brilliant. What a great answer. So instead of giving them the answer, let them come up with the answer. If something happens in the hallway, something happens in the classroom or the playground, what do you think you should do next? And they may need 3 or 4 choices, but let them decide and then affirm that it's a good choice and celebrate their thinking. That's developing intelligence, as opposed to just telling them what to do. Another key element of good educating and parenting is always directing our kids, directing them, not just everything's okay. No, there are some things that aren't okay. There are some things that are the best way of doing something. So give them direction. Tell them what you expect of them as opposed to what you don't expect. So the simplest way to say that, a child's running down the hall, you can yell at them and say, "Stop running." What about, "Hey, walk"? "Hey, so-and-so, walk." Give them direction as what the expectation is. Hey, be friendly, be respectful, listen carefully. You can give them the positive, the true, and the good message and avoid having to use negative language. I think 9 times out of 10, we don't need to use not, don't, won't, can't. We can always give them what is good and true to do. Not that there are times when we absolutely need to say no, stop. There are times for that, but then we need to back it up with what the next right thing to do is. All right, next one. Along with that, we have these 7 keys to communication, really powerful. Using their name, huge, so good, such a trust builder. Using a peaceful talking voice. Quickly as adults, we're humans too, and we can be grouches. It doesn't work. It stifles the relationship and it stifles any growth. So the more peaceful we can talk, the better. And sincerely, look like you really care. Act like you really want to help this child. Then they're going to be more willing to be stretched. Use helpful words, like I was saying earlier. Say what you expect as opposed to what you don't expect. What you don't want to happen, no. Tell them what you do want to happen. And you could ask them, what should you do? And they'll, it's so rare that I ever get an answer that is negative. Give them a reride, as we say in Creston. Redo with an ounce of courage. Hey, we can give you a second chance at this. Let's do it right. And all of a sudden they're practicing what's right. And they're building that neural pathway. So powerful. Be kind. Just be kind. Kids need our love and support. They need our mercy. And they need our direction. That doesn't mean you're accepting of a behavior. That means you're just helping them through. You're accompanying them out of their corner. You're accompanying them out of their misery and helping them move along. And then finally, assume the best. People don't want to do the wrong thing. Kids want to learn. Sometimes they get convinced that they can't. And we need to accompany them, be kind with their struggle, and help them out of it. Help them out of the depths of their corner, if you will. So those are critical keys to communication, clearly not just with kids, but with us as adults too. All right, and here's one more way to look at effective dialogue. This probably deserves its own video too, but I love this idea of I'm spiraling. I'm going back and I'm working with it, and each time I do, I'm going to try to do a next better thing, and I'm going to raise my awareness. I'll raise my level of consciousness of the child. So first thing, one of the 7 habits is to seek first to understand. So we're going to seek first to understand, and then we'll be understood. So you're asking questions. Help me understand why this happened. Good, good. All right, thank you. Tell me more. Well, ask a question here or there. So there's a lot of questioning. What's the feeling you're experiencing, et cetera, et cetera. We add some questions to that. And then we clarify and we summarize and we ask, well, help me understand. When you say this, what do you mean? Can you tell me more? Consider using a variety of questions, including the kite questions, those questions that go along with each quadrant. And then finally, when you've done that questioning and you're ready for resolution, then you're going to say, well, I feel, maybe you have a feeling. I feel a little upset about how this happened. You can be honest about how you're feeling, and this is what I'm going to do. And what are you going to do? So we've guided a child through a thinking process, not just to an answer that we are dictating, but we're guiding them through a thinking process that allows them to build productive habits of mind. Again, that's the goal, is that they become good thinkers. They don't just become good doers because we said so. Again, there are times they should be doing exactly what we say because there's a safety issue or because there's something critical going on. But what we really want to do is help them to develop their thinking skills toward what is good and true and beautiful. So that's a nice way to develop effective dialogue when you are working with a student. Interestingly, it tends to be a little bit harder with our own personal relationships than it is with kids on the playground, because we feel a lot more with that relationship that's more intimate, that's more personal than the ones we have with kids we don't know very well. So it's a great place to practice. If you want to get good at this with your spouse, your friends, your family, do it with kids that aren't your family, and you'll get better at it yourself. Okay, that kind of finishes the information about our philosophy, and just want to throw this kind of idea at you. We thrive because in our mission when we communicate and we collaborate, and we think about these puzzle pieces that are kind of in motion. We're working them together. We're building neural pathways in our kids' brains and in our own brains. And when you have a question or a concern, see your supervisor or the volunteer coordinator, Edith, and communicate, collaborate together, assume the best, use people's names. All of those things will make us a much, much stronger team. So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate your time and your willingness to volunteer with us. And finally, there's just the question pages for you. They're listed, or they're printed out in the back of your packet. So go ahead and answer those questions and submit that to Edith when you're ready. Thanks again. Have a great day. And again, thank you so much. Take care.